Frenchie's Art Gallery, located on historic Oak Street beside the Maple Leaf Bar. With over 3,000 square feet of space, it features a large gallery front room and Frenchie's personal art studio. Frenchie's Art Gallery is also connected to the Maple Leaf Courtyard, which is ideal for the New Orleans night scene. Frenchie's Art Gallery, 8314 Oak Street. Yeah, you're right.
So here's the bottom line. Well, it's funny that you say that. Let me tell you. Well, good evening, New Orleans, and welcome to our 50th episode of Primetime Sports. But from now on, well, it's going to be welcome to Louisiana, the state of Arkansas, East Texas, and the Mississippi, Alabama, and Florida Gulf Coast. Welcome aboard for our very first episode on CST. We're very excited about that, and we have a fabulous show today for you. I cannot wait because we have LSU baseball coach and national champion Paul Maineri just a couple weeks before the season starts. Saints Hall of Famer, the Cajun Cannon, Bobby Hebert. That's always a fun segment. Final Four hoops coach John Brady and superstar high school quarterback Myles Brennan, who tomorrow will be signing his LSU letter of intent on National Signing Day. But this is the part where I talk about the big news of the week. I'm going to keep it short this week because we have so many great guests. And I don't usually start with tennis. In fact, I never start with tennis. But when you have the greatest men's player who's ever lived is a 35-year-old and hasn't won a major in 7 years, and he hasn't beaten his arch rival in 10 years, well, that's big news because Roger Federer, the 17th seed at the Australian Open, beat Rafael Nadal for his 18th Grand Slam, 4 more than Nadal and Pete Sampras. And by the way, Serena Williams won her 23rd, beating her sister Venus as the 23rd Grand Slam. Hey, Saints quarterback Drew Brees, well, he played in his 10th Pro Bowl this weekend, throwing a TD pass in the 2013 loss. And only Peyton Manning and Johnny Unitas have more in the history of the Pro Bowl. The Pelicans, we'll get into them a lot this season, but the Pelicans beat the Cavs and Spurs last week, but they're only 3-3 on this homestand. So now they play 7 of the next 9 on the road. Curtis Johnson, word is, he's back. The former Tulane coach and Saints coach is back with New Orleans. We'll be back on Primetime Sports. Stay tuned. Welcome back, Crescent City, and I guess since it's our first show on CST, I better start saying, welcome back, Louisiana, and the Gulf Coast, of course, all the way through Alabama, Florida, and Mississippi as well, and Arkansas and East Texas as well. So, hey, my next guest needs no introduction. If you're an LSU Tiger fan, he's going into his 11th season as the baseball coach. They start their season on February 17th against the Air Force, so we're just about 2.5 weeks away. But the time he's been here in 10 years, 4 World Series, 1 World Series title, a couple Super Regionals, a couple more regionals, and in his career he has over 1,300 wins. But we're going to get into what the team's doing now, but where he's been before. And, of course, his name is Paul Maineri. Welcome to the show, my friend.
It's good to be here with you in the Crescent City.
There it is. Hey, by the way, when I first came back from Atlanta, I'm New Orleans native, and I moved back, you were really one of my first guests regularly. I mean, I was starting to do radio, which I had never done. Mm-hmm. And you came on pretty regularly during some great years in 13, 15 when you guys were rolling.
Well, you got to love Louisiana, and I do. I had an opportunity to come back here 11 years ago. Got the chance to make a lot of new friends, reacquaint with old friends. We've had some pretty good teams through the years, and those 13 and 15 teams are 2 of the best ones. Still a little bit of a thorn in my side that we didn't win it all with both of those teams because they were very talented and very successful teams. We just ran into a little bit of bad luck right there at the end of the year.
It's so hard, though. I mean, there's 8 teams that go. Just to get there is incredible, and that's what I keep trying to tell people. And I remember you run into a buzzsaw, you run into a good pitcher, and it's all over. But before we get into those teams and I want to get people to know you a little bit.
Okay.
If you don't know, he's a Miami native. He grew up in Miami. His father was a college baseball coach, and he came to LSU first. He played at LSU for a year in 1976, went home, played with his dad for a year, and then came back and was at UNO for 2 years. And that's UNO when they first went to the regional. That's him at LSU, and we had to get some old picks. But then he ended up getting his master's degree, and then he ended up coaching at a place called St. Thomas University, on the Air Force, then Notre Dame, and then here. So we're going to get into this right away. Talk about why you first came to LSU, and then come back to go to UNO as well.
First of all, I wish I could grow sideburns like those again.
You were looking great in the 70s,
My hair
but
was
man,
a little
you still
bit
look
long.
good. But
Look at that
hair.
long hair, huh?
Those are some nice burns.
Yeah. Well, coming out of high school, for me, Scott, I was a football quarterback and a high school baseball player, and I loved football, and I always dreamt of being the quarterback at Notre Dame, but I was too small, not good enough, so baseball was my route, and my dream then was to play for my father in junior college, and what happened was during my junior year, the LSU team came down to Miami to play the University of Miami in a series. They played my father on Thursday night in an exhibition game. I was out at the ballpark like I normally would be. Met the coach. He invited me up for a trip. I fell in love with LSU. So that stuff about playing for my dad, I went ahead and put it on hold and came to LSU. Had an amazing experience here for a year. I met my future wife, who's been stuck with me now for 37 years, 4 children, 3 grandchildren. She's a Bell Chase gal, Karen.
Oh, wow, okay.
And loved LSU, but, the heartstrings were tugging on me, and I just wanted to go back and play for my dad. Just by the grace of God, I ended up back at UNO. I fell in love with a coach by the name of Ron Maestri, still one of the most influential people in my life. I had 2 wonderful years, great teammates like Manny Coletti and Jim Kropog, and on there's Mace when we coached against each other. When he came back for his second turn.
Right, the second time.
But I had the 2 most fantastic years with great teammates, great coaches here at UNO. And but then ended up, after a little bit of pro ball, went back to Miami, started my coaching career, and I guess the rest is history.
Before we get off of Maestri, I have to say, I remember literally doing 4 years of radio here, and that is my most memorable interview. I had you 2 in the press box at UNO, and obviously he's your mentor. I mean, 2 years, and y'all have remained extremely close. Talk about that relationship and what it's meant to you.
Ron Maestri is basically my second father. I mean, I was so lucky to grow up as the son of a coach. He taught me everything I know, but when you're the son of a coach, especially one that you have great respect for and taught you everything that you know about life and about sports, you look for that one other person that can also kind of supplement what you've learned from your father. And I kept striving to find that person, and I knew when I met Ron Maestri 5 minutes into the conversation, it was like God had sent him into my life. And I told him, Mace, I want to come and play for you. And I never regretted it for a second. Not only the 2 years of playing for him, but a lifetime after.
And I know the NCAA tournament's not the same. You guys made it, and people forget this. They're the first team from Louisiana after you were there in '84 with one of my high school teammates. They got to the College World Series.
Well, that's not exactly right, Scott. I finished in '79, but I think if you ask Ron Maestri and he told you the truth, he will tell you that his '79 team was probably the best team he had. And when we didn't get to the World Series, we got upset in Starkville by Mississippi State. And 5 years later, the '84 team ended up going to the World Series. But I was there with them. I was coaching
Kenny
by
Benor,
that time.
shortstop.
They were, we were so proud. There was such a great bond between the players through the generation there of that time. Whether you played with them or not, like I never played with Kenny Benur or
He was 5 years
or
later,
Augie Garrido, but I didn't play with Brian Snitker before or those guys. Yet we all had a common bond, and that bond was Ron Maestri.
I'm going to take you through real quick. St. Thomas, you spent 6 years there. It seems like you're everywhere in equals of 6. 6 years there, and then you went 6 years to the Air Force. But talk about this. Your jersey not only was retired, but they named the field after you.
Well, that was quite an honor, I'll be honest with you. But my career started because I was, there's a picture in front of with my wife in front of the scoreboard at the field at St. Thomas. they gave me an opportunity, a young coach. I was 25 years old, Scott. I was had been an assistant baseball coach for 3 years in high school.
Sure.
And I thought I would get the head coaching job when the head coach moved on to another position. They passed on me. And so I was pretty distraught, quite frankly.
So you said, I'm going to go get a college job.
Well, what happened was I had received my master's degree from St. Thomas University, and quite frankly, it was a part-time position. So I only got paid $3,200. They didn't have a lot of applications for the job, but it was an opportunity for me, and I hopped on it. Eventually, the job became a full-time job. I even became the athletic director there. I was there a total of 6 years before the Air Force Academy
And
made
tell me
me
how you
their
got to
first
the Air
civilian
Force.
coach. Yeah. Well, we played the Air Force Academy in what turned out to be my last year at St. Thomas. Had a great game against him. We must have fooled him and looked well coached.
Right.
The head coach of the team was a military officer, and he explained to me that they were transitioning into a civilian position. So he went back, recommended me, and I got the job.
And then you go to South Bend, and we all know 2002. Who could forget that World Series? Obviously, LSU was still rolling. They had just finished winning 5 World Series, obviously, during the 90s up to 2000. But you get to the World Series in 2002. I mean, listen, just getting – I mean, by the way, is that Andre the Giant? That's your pitcher?
Well, that's Brian Doherty. He's the tallest player in the history of college baseball, so almost 7'2", and that's my son, Nick, who's an accomplished author, just had his first book released by HarperCollins on November 15th. Yes, that's him. He was on our team. But Ryan is now a beach volleyball pro. Almost made the Olympic team.
That's awesome.
And he was a relief pitcher. But 12 years at Notre Dame, Scott, were absolutely fantastic. I loved it. I've loved everywhere I've been. That's after we got the last out in Tallahassee
to go to
in the Super Regional.
Beating Florida State, correct?
They were 59-8.
And they were number one.
Them, number one in the country. So, you know, a decade later, I knew what it felt like to be Stony Brook against us. The shoe was on the other foot a decade earlier.
Well, I remember that team so well because at that point I'm producing ACC games every weekend, and they were the standard bearer, Mike Martin, correct, the head coach?
Oh, they had a great ball club that year. And so we beat them and went there, and I just loved every second I was at Notre Dame.
And you know what? It just proved, this one picture I'm going to show you, that Notre Dame truly is a football school because they make the baseball players wear helmets too. I just couldn't resist on that one.
Well, that's one of our players, Brian Savitsky. He'd gotten hit by a pitch and broke his jaw, so they used that for protection.
Pretty funny.
That is pretty funny.
All right, you got to LSU. Now, here's the thing. You didn't replace the legend, but you replaced a guy named Smoke Laval who was well-loved in Louisiana, and you came in. But what was your expectation, and what did you think the fans' expectations were by the time you got here to Baton Rouge?
Scott, when I was a coach at Notre Dame, I mean, Air Force, St. Thomas, I followed LSU very closely because of my time here, and also I've known Skip Bertman. But when he hired me, I had known him for 40 years.
Skip Bertman, right, the great manager.
He grew up in Miami, Florida, so there's Skip, excuse me, and I. And so when Skip, I had turned down 4 other jobs in the SEC, but when Skip called, boy, that was it. That was the one job that I could leave Notre Dame for. And for me, LSU represented the best in college baseball. It was the pinnacle position. I thought we could be the national champion caliber team again. Thought there was magic in the name LSU. And the opportunity to come back down here was just something I couldn't say no to. I would have regretted it for the rest of my life. So when I first got here, it was a little bit of struggle the first year.
Yeah.
The second year, we had a great finish, 23-game winning streak, made it to Omaha. Then our third year, we won the national championship.
I remember the 23-game win streak because I remember, I don't remember exactly, I think it was like 23 and 16 at the time. All of a sudden, the Tigers rip off 23, and then the expectations were super high the next year, and it's rare that you can have them this high and you still achieve the great national championship.
Well, you know, the year before in 2008, we were picked to finish 5th in the SEC West, and we made it to Omaha as a national seed. The next year, we started the season preseason number 1 in the country and went on to win the national championship. So what a remarkable group of guys. We just had, obviously very talented, handful of them are in the major leagues right now, but they had a tremendous chemistry, a tremendous bond. They loved representing LSU, and what a moment that was when
the dog
we won
piles.
it all.
I mean, it's just great. I mean, I have some great pictures of most. We've had some of your players. I forgot Chad Jones was on recently.
Oh, yeah.
I had Mason Katz, and that team to me, because I had just moved back, And I went to almost every game, literally. So Mason and Rafe Rhymes.
Oh,
I mean,
wow.
they were close, but man, I mean, when I look at some of the great players, you've had
Yeah.
Bregman and Nola and obviously Gosman. Talk about some of these guys.
Well, it's so hard to win that last game of the year, Scott. Skip made it look easy. He won 5 times in a decade.
Right,
but I can tell you this, it doesn't take just great teams. You also have to be great on a given weekend, and you got to have a little bit of luck as well. We haven't had a better team than we had in 13 when Rhymes led the country in hitting and Katz was hitting 16 home runs, and we had great players all throughout the lineup. We went to Omaha that year. We were 57-9. We had already set the SEC record for wins.
I still say if you were in Rosenblatt, you win that because I'm not going to make excuses. I tell everybody that long field that killed it.
Well, we hit 3 balls that night. Katz did hit a home run. He crushed it, and it was a fence scraper to barely get over. And then I remember Christian Ibarra hit 2 balls. Stevenson hit 1. I thought they were all gone. They died at the warning track, and then of course we had a couple of misplays late in the game. We lose 2-1 to UCLA.
Coach, you got the Fab Four that came back. This has been making news, and obviously Times-Picayune I've been reading about it. I saw a little thing on TV about it. Talk about what these guys coming back mean to you. Dykeman, obviously, Freeman, of course, Jared Poche, who seems like he's been here about 8 years. and who's the fourth I'm missing out on?
Greg Dykeman, did you say? Kramer
Dykeman.
Robertson.
Kramer Robertson, the heart and soul
yeah,
of the team.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, listen, it's very unusual, Scott. You don't often have 4 players of that caliber return to school. In fact, it's hard to have 1 player return to school for their senior year because in baseball it's a leverage game to be able to get signing bonuses and so forth. So to see the love that these players have for LSU, it was paramount because of their decision to come back. And Poche's got a chance to be the winningest pitcher in the history of LSU program. We've got a double play combination that I wouldn't trade for anybody's in the country.
Oh my goodness,
between
yeah.
Robertson and Freeman.
Right.
And I think Greg Dykeman's got a chance to be the premier power hitter in the country.
And he's just moved the outfield, correct?
And
yeah.
he's a really good right fielder. So we've got those 4 guys, but you got Alex Lang returning. You got Papirski behind the plate. We've got good players really all over. Antoine Duplantis makes the move over to center field. So we're going into this season with a lot of high hopes, a lot of high expectations. Everybody right away wants to talk about Omaha National Championships. And then I look at the schedule, and starting February 17th, we got a 56-game grind that I know we got to negotiate our way through. So you're not going to catch me looking too far down the road.
And you never do. I can never ask you about a weekend game on a Tuesday. You guys, Scott, we have a game tomorrow night. I'm not getting into the weekend game. Well, that's what makes you great. By the way, I have to say 1,300 plus wins. I think you're at 1,324 now. It's a great accomplishment. Guys like Bregman, like I said, Kevin Gosman with the Orioles, Aaron Nola, the list goes on and on. Coach, congratulations.
Thank you, Scott.
And it's an honor to have you on my first CST show.
Oh, congratulations to you.
And here we go. This is our tradition.
Okay.
We sign balls on this show.
All right.
And here's a $50 gift certificate. You take your beautiful wife next time you come. This is a great wine bistro when you come back down to New Orleans. And there he is, Paul Maineri, right here. Get there February 17th. They open up with the Air Force. And then obviously it's going to be a great schedule all the way through. He's got some great players coming back and some great new talent like they always have. Hey, we're not done yet. We've got a full show for you. Later in the show, I've got the guy that's going to be, in about 20 hours, he's going to be officially an LSU Tiger. He's the quarterback, Myles Brennan out of St. Stanislaus. He broke all the Mississippi passing records. He's coming up at the end of the show. And we have our weekly guest, John Brady, who's going to be with us throughout the rest of the college basketball season. But next, well, there's only one Bobby Hebert. He is the Cajun Cannon. He is the king of the Who Dat Nation, and he's coming up next right here on Primetime Sports. Well, welcome back, Crescent City, and I want to thank my last guest, Paul Maineri. Well, he had to get back for practice, so don't forget, opening day is February 17th for the LSU Tigers. Check them out when they start the season. But my next guest, well, here in New Orleans, he needs no introduction. That's right, he is the king of the Who Dat Nation. He's the Cajun Cannon. He's a guy that played with the Saints for several years, brought them their first winning record, their first playoff game, games plural, and one of their first Sports Illustrated covers. That happened in 1991. Well, we're going to have some fun with Bobby Hebert. Welcome to the show, my friend.
Thanks, Scott. Thanks for having me.
You're on the 3rd show, and I said in the open, this is the 50th episode, but it's my first on CST. And when I started thinking about it, I said, I've got to get Bobby Hebert here.
Well, you and I go way back even to Atlanta. And I always appreciated, you always had good Hawks tickets.
Exactly.
You know, yeah.
I forgot about that. I did hook my man up, and that's when T-Bob
Right,
and Bo
and
were
Bo were
young.
little, yeah.
And I know Bo was a huge Steve Nash fan back when the Suns were great.
Yeah.
Hey, first of all, speaking of, I know the last time I had you on, we got into the whole, your career with the Saints and obviously USFL and Falcons, but people don't know this, and I said it last time. You're 96th overall in passing yards in the NFL, but when you add your USFL yards, you're 27th all time. I think that would surprise a lot of people.
Well, I embrace that. You know why I embrace that? Because it is pro football.
No, it does. By the way, the all-time leading passer. Let me
Warren
just say this.
Moon?
All-time leading Warren Moon would have a ton. But Bobby's the all-time leading passer in USFL history, that 3-year run, and my man was doing it for over 13,000 yards.
Surpassed two Hall of Famers in Jim Kelly and Steve Young. I think Jim Kelly, Houston Gamblers, Steve Young, LA Express. So I think, it wasn't a developmental league. It wasn't like AAA baseball. It was truly a professional league, considering the money they spent. For instance, President Donald Trump owned the New Jersey Generals.
That's right, he's the president now. That's right.
Gary Barbaro, he got from the Kansas City Chiefs, East Jefferson, Nickel State, to go there and paid him big bucks. Doug Flutie, Herschel Walker. So, no, it was a league that was trying to compete with the NFL, but Donald Trump screwed that up and should have stayed in the spring and the summer instead of trying to move it to the fall.
Speaking of Herschel Walker, he would be the NFL's all-time leading rusher if you counted his USFL yards. But let's go forward. The Saints, real quick. Your time here, you got here, I believe, in 85, right off the USFL season.
Right.
You're full-time starter in 87, and then they go that magical 12-3 year. Talk about your run here, because it also included a year where you sat out.
Well, if you look at that 87 season, that was the woulda, coulda, shoulda game. When all of a sudden, I forgot the final score was 30-some, that we lost to the 49ers there. That would have been Bum Phillips, who I previously had played for, and Wade, who's the interim coach.
Wade Phillips, right?
He would have said, like, oh, well, we played hard. Maybe we'll get him next week. And Morris said, no, Jim Morris said, we're not good enough. Yeah, we would have won, could have won, should have won, but we didn't. All of a sudden, after that 49ers game, we won 9 games in a row. Now, you have to look at it. The Saints had never won more than 8 games.
Trust me,
and we won 9 in a row. That was the strike season. So one game got canceled. We finished 12-3.
Amazing.
And then you look in 1988, we finished 10-6 and didn't make the playoffs. Now we're hoping for 10-6.
Right. 10-6 would be a dream.
That you're going to be a playoff team. Then we won 12 games. We won 11-5 in 1991. We won the NFC West, the division. And then in 92, we were 12-4. The bottom line, you got to do something in that second season, in the postseason, and we didn't quite get it done. But the only time I got it done was with Coach O, who's now at LSU in high school, in 1977.
South Lafourche, baby.
1977.
Is it the Tarpons?
And the Tarpons, like the 4-chain
I wore my
Tarpons.
Tarpons on here
Yeah,
for you.
I think a Blue Marlin.
There
Yeah.
you go. All right.
And then we end up, winning the USFL championship in '83. Then in '85 in the Meadowlands, we merged with the Oakland Invaders when I went from Michigan. And then because of Donald Trump with the merger, and so what ended up happening, we lost that championship. But I've been in championship games.
Bobby, we've had some fun over the years in Atlanta. I'm going to a few restaurants, some late nights, and also training camp. We always have fun. So I thought I'd have some fun here on the show.
All right.
I've got a new thing that I'm doing with you. It's called Splain This. And so, Bobby, we're going to start with this picture back when I think your first time on national TV, WWL, but it was CBS National. Splain this, Bobby. This is a good look you got going right there.
Oh, right then, you look at that gap in my tooth. that is because that's a fake tooth because I got my teeth already knocked out. Was that probably with Jimmy the Greek or something?
Yeah, that was the big thing on CBS.
My wife said I used to talk like this.
Yes,
you
did.
And I still have a Cajun accent on certain words, but
those speech lessons are paying off.
Right, I don't know about that, or just being different place, I guess. But yeah, you see that I got pretty teeth now. Yeah,
this is a good time to plug your dentist. All right, moving forward, we're not done with Splain This. We got Splain This. This one right here, well, this is a hairdo. You've had many solid hairdos over the years, but here's a mullet. And I started
that
looking
is a true mullet.
The trees in the background? No, that's your hair.
No, that I'm like Billy Ray Cyrus, however that looked. But you know how I ended up growing my hair even long in honor of, you know who? Fred Biletnikoff.
That's one of my favorites.
Fred Biletnikoff with the Raiders
number 25.
was the wide receiver coach for the Oakland Invaders.
Was he?
So he said, Hebert, you got to let your hair grow long enough to touch your name. So I said, okay, Fred, I'm going to do it in honor of you. So, but I look back at that picture, I look like a big Donny Osmond. It was kind of like if you.
That's pretty funny.
I got that from my grandma.
Why are the ones so far apart on the jersey? They look like they look like goalposts.
It's just a broad chest. That's when I was benching about 330. So.
Okay, we'll stop there. We got a few more. Let's go with this one because this is. You know the thing on the press box on the credential that says no cheering? Explain this, Bobby. And I love Steve Court in the background laughing, but you've gotten kicked out of a press box.
God, you know what I think? I think that was that Jets game. And you know the awesome one in a Ryan, was that, who was that? Had to
I
be,
didn't want to show the LSU when the police were leading you out of there.
That had to be either that was the Jets. I want to say Rex Ryan, if I can reflect back, and we sacked them for safety. So we did something to their offense what they wanted to do to Drew Brees. But I'm glad where they got me now.
I love your passion, though, man. I love it.
Well, I represent the fans, and that's what I was. Hey. The Who Dat Nation has been unbelievable. This is the Saints' greatest run. Now, we haven't had success the last 3 seasons. Who wants to be average? And we are average if you're 500.
Sure.
But think about what Drew Brees and Sean Payton has accomplished.
No doubt.
That's why it's giving the city hope. Now, next year, I think is truly feet to the fire, do or die. It is playoffs or bust, or then you might have to go in a different direction.
Yeah, from 9 to 11, 37-11. I'll get in that in a second. And obviously the last 3 years, 21 and 27. I got 2 more fun ones, though. These are even better. Well, this is it, man. You look cute in this picture, but explain this. Right here, you're looking good in a dress and a wig. And I know there's a story behind this one.
I'm just glad I didn't fall off the float. And I think D grabbed me 2 or 3 times. I was actually showing off my calf right there. And that was all in honor of Buddy D. And he said,
Buddy Diliberto.
Because Buddy Diliberto thought the Saints will never go to the Super Bowl. People think like Buddy D was such a big Saints fan. He was a Saints fan, but he didn't think they were ever going to do anything. He goes, I'll wear a dress if they ever go to the Super Bowl. So I had fans calling me up, look, this not win the Super Bowl.
Buddy D in that picture
Go to the Super Bowl. And I said, okay, I'll wear a dress. I had my wife fix me up. My daughter actually showed me your muumuu. She's really successful in the fashion industry. She made me that top. My wife got me that wig, and I said, well, if I'm going to dress like a woman, I'm going to look like a woman, like, Dolly Parton-like. So I ended up looking like a Viking queen on steroids.
I think you look beautiful.
Yeah, right. But I was feeling no pain at that time. And it was about, I want to say it was about 30 degrees, so it was cold, but it's amazing. I think the New Orleans Police Department got mad at us because, you have to have a permit to have parades. Yeah. We thought...
But you're Bobby Hebert. You don't need permits.
We planted this. I never said, we got to do a parade on Wednesday. The parade was on Sunday. We thought, there'll be about 10,000 people. There was like almost 90,000. It was like 80-some thousand.
So bummed I missed it. I was out of town.
And we were going from the Superdome to Bourbon Street at Oceana where we're doing a show on Conti Street. We think it took us just to get to where we were doing a show after like 5 hours. It was unbelievable, right. The crowd. Nobody was moving, just partying.
That was fun. And those are all explainable.
Right.
But this last one, I still have not figured this out. So explain this right here. No, there's no, you're trying to hide your falconism but in a hoodie, but you are a falcon. And what's up with this?
That's probably, I'm thinking of cold weather games.
I'm just talking about being a Falcon, period. Yeah, this is unforgivable.
Look, that's Jeff George, unbelievable armor. I was just talking about him earlier, he's like the old school Jay Cutler.
I might not have gotten to know you as well if you did move to Atlanta, because I got there about the same time.
I don't have nothing against the Falcons. Listen, I went hunting at, quail hunting at Rankin Smith, who owned the team. I never went to Mr. Benson's ranch in San Antonio.
I was friends with his son-in-law, so I've been to that ranch.
So they took care of me. Yeah. Listen, I was a mercenary. I didn't want to quit. Listen, people don't realize, they think I left the Saints. No, Jim Finks went and get Wade Wilson from the Vikings. I still wanted to play. I was like 33 years of age, so that's how I ended up in Atlanta. Hey, I made the Pro Bowl in '94.
No, you did. You did.
So
the '93 season, '94 Pro Bowl. Right?
Yes, I had a great experience in Atlanta.
And you had another
but the
great
bottom
year
line, I'm from Louisiana. And I was just a mercenary. So.
All right, speaking of being from Louisiana, there's 3 great quarterbacks. We've had about 5 or 6 that I can say. I think they were very good in history.
Right.
But there's 3 that everybody knows. It's, of course, Drew Brees, Archie Manning, and then Jim Everett. No, I'm just kidding. Bobby Hebert is the 3rd one. And here's a picture of you 3 together. What does it mean to be in this triumvirate of greatness?
Well, I tell you what, that's history right there. If you look at Saints history and Archie Manning, considering the expectation where he was drafted, I was a local boy coming here and the expectations, and obviously bringing Drew Brees on board and winning that Super Bowl.
And
I mean, that's a lot of Saints history right there in 50 years.
And I'm also noticing something else about that picture. There's 3 guys that have been on this show in the first couple months that are the ones you can see most in that picture. If you put it up again, Willie Roaf, Ricky Jackson, and Tooth McAllister, all like you, right here on Primetime Sports.
Yeah, well, I tell you what, Willie Roaf, if you talk about greatest player in Saints history, you know, Ricky, I think Willie Roaf, as far as dominant.
Put him third.
I put him 1.
Do you?
Simply because not only did he in a Saints uniform, but he did it in a Chiefs uniform.
The Chiefs
still
impressive.
was dominant.
Well, you know, Bobby, we don't care about what he did as a Chief, but it is impressive. When you're all decade for one decade and you're all decade for the other.
Morton Anderson,
right?
Yeah.
So you need to have a radio show.
Hopefully he'll get involved.
I'm just kidding,
or get involved. Hopefully he will be inducted into the Hall of Fame. And you know, another thing, a tidbit people don't realize. You know, he was the all-time leading kicker for the Saints and the Falcons.
All-time scorer.
But scorer. But you know what happened? Matt Bryant just passed him up this year.
Him.
He just passed him.
Okay.
So you see Matt Bryant.
Can't say that anymore.
Matt Bryant's one of those kickers that when it comes down to the Falcons winning or losing, he will make that kick.
And by the way, Morton Anderson happens to be my newest Facebook friend. And moving forward, hey, by the way, Drew Brees, I got to get into the Saints now.
Right.
Talk about, what he means to this city. I mean, generally, because he's been here. It's obvious, but from your mind, another quarterback that was great here, what has Drew Brees meant to New Orleans?
Drew Brees is everything. I mean, people think, now my wife thinks Drew Brees is almost too good to be true. I mean, he's truly an outstanding individual on and off the field, and people might say, oh, it's all calculated. Well, so what? He's still a great individual. And I think what Drew Brees means to the Saints and this community, I'm probably going to be dead before we see someone like that again. Or we all.
It's hard to imagine because he's woven himself into the fabric of the city, Mardi Gras and everything else. He's all about.
Listen, there's going to be a lot of pressure, and I would hate to be the next quarterback to follow Drew Brees. It's almost a scenario like the Dolphins are still looking for the next Dan Marino. John Elway, the Broncos are looking for the next John Elway. He had to go and get a veteran like Peyton Manning to try and achieve success, and they did. They won a Super Bowl. But listen, Drew Brees, it speaks for itself what he means to the team. And my wife said I have a man crush on him, and she also said, if you hear anything bad about Drew Brees, don't tell me.
All right, I don't
want to know about it.
I'm running out of time, but I have to say this. Can he recapture the magic? I just said 21-27. And by the way, on a 2-part question, would you like to be able to throw to these receivers he has now? I know you had a great one in Aaron Martin, but me and you were the only ones in training camps that said this was going to be the best receiving core in the NFL. Michael Thomas, of course, the rookie, to go along with Brandon Cooks and Willie Snead.
Well, they have the best trio of receivers, but again, I say Drew Brees makes them who they are. If you look at Jimmy Graham, he's had some success, but Drew Brees helped Jimmy Graham get paid. Listen, the bottom line is you have a chance to go to the playoffs with a Super Bowl because of Drew Brees. The defense has to get better. When I look at it, they got the right quarterback, just got to get the pieces around him.
Bobby, you're on the 3rd show. Now you're on the 50th. So we're going to christen a brand new ball for you.
Right.
For I got a $50 gift certificate. We upped it for the big hitters today. 50 for a Great Wine Bistro. My man, Shays Delashays, right there.
Awesome.
On Maple between Carrollton and Broadway.
Thank you.
Hey, you're going to get the initial signature, so I'm going to let you go right up there. Bobby Hebert, second guest on the 50th first CST
now,
show.
the last thing I want to tell you,
right.
now to show you that I'm not overly infatuated with Drew Brees, you know what he has to do? And the difference between him, Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, and even Matt Ryan with the dreaded Atlanta Falcons, throw less interceptions. If you look at all the touchdowns and the yards, that's the difference.
We all have an Achilles heel,
Protect the football better next season. That could be a key. The Saints end up on the plus side in the turnover margin.
Check this man out, WWL, each and every day, Drive Time Sports Talk Radio. Him and Deke Bellavi do it great, and they've been doing it for a long time, 14 years, I believe. He started going back and forth. Hey, we're coming back. I'm still got to the end of the show. We've got Myles, Brennan, the great quarterback out of St. Stanislaus, who's about to sign his letter of intent tomorrow with the LSU Tigers. Cross your fingers there. And also, coming up next, the beginning of a weekly thing we're going to do through the rest of the basketball season. Former Final Four coach from the LSU Tigers, that's right, John Brady, will be joining us right here on Primetime Sports.
Rock and roll rockin' bowl at Mid-City Lane. All night, let's bowl, let's rock and roll. Baby, do the rockin' bowl. At Mid-City Lane's the home of rockin' bowl.
The owners of the Delachaise Wine Bar on St. Charles Avenue have opened up their newest creation uptown on Maple Street called Chez Delachaise, a new local wine bistro featuring a larger menu of small and large plates, a brighter atmosphere, and full table service. Additionally, patrons can enjoy a large patio out front as well as an extensive wine list offering selections from around the world. It's Chez Delachaise, 7708 Maple Street between Carrollton and Broadway.
Crescent City Steakhouse, a true neighborhood restaurant operated by the Vojkovic family since 1934, is the oldest steakhouse in the city of New Orleans. Serving only hand-cut, prime-aged, corn-fed beef for over 80 years, Crescent City Steakhouse has become a dining destination for both die-hard locals and adventurous travelers who seek traditional, timeless New Orleans cuisine. Crescent City Steakhouse, 1001 North Broad, on the corner of St. Philip, in the heart of New Orleans. Welcome back, Crescent City, Baton Rouge, Lafayette, the state of Louisiana, everybody else. Well, I just really enjoyed that last segment with Bobby Hebert, and of course, Paul Maineri kicked off the show. Don't forget, Myles Brennan, the LSU quarterback, well, he'll be signing tomorrow, and he will be the LSU quarterback of the future. Hey, my next guest, though, is no stranger to LSU as well. I had him on last year during the NCAA tournament. We had 3 or 4 shows where we kind of broke down who was in the tourney, who we thought were going to advance. And we said we had so much fun. We're going to do this and expand it. For the next 2+ months, maybe even longer into the pro playoffs, we're going to have John Brady come and break it all down. And today will be his first official one. We're going to call it Hoops with Brady or something like that. We'll figure out the name. But here he is, John Brady, Final Four coach at LSU. Dare I say, the last Final Four coach with the LSU Tigers.
That's a true statement right there.
It
is a true statement. And special time, and proud to have been able to do that.
But welcome to the show again, my friend.
Glad to be here.
It looks like
congratulations to you on the CST and the show and the expansion of it. And the guests today were unbelievable.
Well, thank you so much.
Yeah.
But by the way, you're wearing retirement well. You having fun?
Enjoying life. Not a lot of stress, not a lot of pressure, and doing some things I hadn't been able to do in years, and really having a good time. I like where I am.
All right, we're going to jump into this. First of all, you know what it's we're going to talk about a lot of coaches and teams, and you've been through it all. I mean,
Right.
You've been obviously at the mountaintop with this Final Four team. Obviously, you had Big Baby, Tyrus Thomas, Garrett Temple, Tasman Mitchell.
Daryl Mitchell.
Daryl Mitchell, by the way, the big shot guy, number 22 there. So you've been to the mountaintop. You've seen it.
Right. Yeah, I have, and I've seen it on the other end too. So I can see it from the coach's perspective. I've been there and I've seen it, go a ways. But I've been on both ends of it, and that's why sometimes I'm sensitive to coaches and where they are and their plight. I'm not a guy that's against coaches. I want coaches to make it, and I'm all for coaches doing the best they can and getting the best contracts they possibly can.
Yeah, and they should. By the way, Tasman Mitchell was just on the show, and you made a cameo appearance at the end. He is one of the great ones. But speaking of coaches that aren't, they're kind of a valley right now up in Baton Rouge. The Tigers are struggling right now. People seem to forget LSU was 11-7 in conference last year, but it was deemed to be a disappointment because they had Ben Simmons. They were 11-7 the year before, and 22-14 should get you a long way, but right now they're on a 7-game losing streak.
Well, I think to back up, as you said, it's not what he's done; it's how it's happened.
Okay.
The expectation level a year ago, I've said this, I've been on record with this, that whole thing was set up, I think, not fair to the coaches, the players, the fans. When Ben Simmons came in, he was a self-ordained player, and anything less than a Sweet 16 or Final Four was a disappointment last year, and it didn't work out as everybody would have thought. So I think now, coupled with that disappointment, even though they're 11-7 in the league, with what is happening there now, I think it's somewhat unfair, but as people say, it is what it is. But Johnny has done an overall good job there, but the way it has failed has certainly not been in his favor.
Antonio Blakeney, I mean, he's pretty much the only NBA talent I would think is on this team. I feel bad for this young man. I mean, listen, I know he's giving it all like most of the Tigers are, but 7-game losing streak, it's tough to get motivated.
Well, I watched them play. I was in Lubbock the other day and watched them play Texas Tech. One of my former players at Arkansas State, Anthony Livingston, plays for Texas Tech.
Stud,
now. He was
stud.
He's a really good player.
Yes,
he was a senior graduate, one-year guy, and Chris Beard, the coach out there, is a friend of mine, and Anthony didn't want to come back to Arkansas State because I was leaving, so I went out there and watched them play. And I was impressed with LSU's team, the way they tried to play.
Right.
They're still playing. They're still trying. I think sometimes Blakeney needs a little bit more shot structure. They need to do some things for him to get him better shots. But he's certainly a talent, and it's too bad he's in the situation he's in right now.
I'm going to run through some local teams, and then we're going to get to the national big picture, which we're going to cover both local and national all through the rest of the season with John. But first of all, you've been to a lot of games with Dale Brown, too. I wanted to point that out, and that's been pointed out in the national media as well. But let's go right down the road here. Mike Dunleavy, an accomplished player in the NBA, an accomplished coach as well. Well, is the honeymoon over? Because they are struggling even worse than LSU right now.
Well, they've had some struggles, but you expect that with a first-year coach and the program that he took over. He's trying to get his system in, what he wants to do. And really, you can't judge a coach, I don't think, early on until about his third or fourth year when his recruiting class gets on board. He inherited the team. He's doing his best with what he has. But I still think he's disappointed in losing at home to McNeese, losing to UNO, and losing at home to Texas State. I think those are certainly games that he thought they may win early on. But I think you can't say anything about him until you see his recruiting classes kick in. But he knows what he's doing. He's got the experience to do it, and we'll just see what happens.
Well, we've been to a Tulane game. We've been to UNO game, and the Lakefront seems to be the buzz right now, still in first despite their loss this weekend. 7-2 in conference. Mark Schlesinger just got it rolling on Lakefront.
Mark's doing a great job there. His team plays hard. They defend. They share the ball. Certainly right now in Louisiana basketball on the collegiate level, at the Division I level, he's certainly the bright spot for what's going on here in the state in the state of basketball.
And we will continue to go to games. The conference you were in last year, the Sun Belt, Arkansas State, last night they beat ULL. Lafayette folks, I know you want me to say UL, but folks down here think it's Louisville sometimes. But University of Louisiana, they got beat by 20. Arkansas State, your place where you coached for 8-9 years, they just swept them. What about Bob Marlin?
Bob Marlin's a good basketball coach.
Right.
Arkansas State's really good now. They got 3 starters back from what we left there. The new coach there is doing an excellent job. But I like Bob Marlin. I've known him forever, 30 years or more. He's an excellent basketball coach. He's doing a good job there.
Okay, here's a shot at Bob Marlin. Would you say this is strong or fairly strong? Because he's going all in with this tattoo. I mean, he's a lifer right now.
Well, I would just think about my next job. I mean, what's going to happen with that on my next job? I can't believe that's a real tattoo. There's got to be
unless
something.
he's coaching the Saints, he might be in trouble. Let's move forward. Let's stay real close. Let's stay home to the pro level. You've been to some Pelicans games. Listen, they started 10-21, 0-8. They have won 9. They've been 9-8 since then, since December 22nd. Okay, they just beat the Cavs and Spurs in the same week. 2 of the great wins in the franchise. I'm going to say history. Those are great wins in the same week, but you had the worst loss to Brooklyn. Inconsistency seems to be their problem.
That's exactly right. You know, when we were talking about that, that's the thing that pops in my brain. How do you explain beating the Cavs without your best player, and then sometimes when your best player is there, you lose to the worst team in the league? I think the inconsistency is the most puzzling thing about their team. I don't think this homestand turned out as well as they would have liked. Now they've got to go on the road for several games. But I still hope and I still think they can make the playoffs because of the situation they're in within the division they play in.
It's there for the taking, only a couple games out. Hey, let's get into the national picture, and we're going to really get into this next week and the weeks after because we're going to have a lot more time with John. But the first thing that sticks out to me, Duke is struggling. Yes, they have won recently 2 road games. Obviously, they beat Wake this weekend. They got over Notre Dame last night in a nice game. But this is not a Coach K type year. They were 4-4 in the conference going into last night's game, which they won. But what's the problem over there in Durham?
Well, they started early with a couple of players out, and then they started playing well. And then Coach K has the back issue, so he's not there every day to coach the team. And certainly different than the pro game. When the pro game, you think about players, you identify with the team. In the college game, you think about the head coach, identify with the team. So with Coach K not being there on a day-to-day basis, regardless of how good the assistant is, I think it affects the everyday play of that team.
All right, I got to get into Kentucky. Best team in the SEC, obviously. They have a kid named Marcus Monk. He's dynamite. They did lose to Kansas, but they're still one of the best in the country.
Well, there's no question about it. And I think this year they're going to be like that with all the freshmen they do play. I think John Calipari does a tremendous job by getting a new team every year, basically. But Marcus Monk,
this guy's above the rim like nobody's business. He's only 6'3".
Well,
look at some of these pictures.
He's a legitimate one and done. You know, sometimes you get the hype of a guy and you watch him play and say, well, I don't know if he's all that. But the hype of this guy, he matches the hype. And he's one of those players, Scott, that is not only athletic but tremendously skilled as well. And that's a great combination to have as a guard.
Hey, I'm going to gloss over Kansas. We'll get to them next week. They actually lost to West Virginia, but beat Kentucky, so they only dropped one. They're like 2 in one poll, 3 in the other. But the team that's number 1 in both polls is Gonzaga. And I've got to throw this out. Only the second time ever they've been number 1. Mark Few has been there 18 years. He started there right after he started LSU. But real quick, Nigel Williams-Goss, transfer obviously from Washington, and then you have Jordan Matthews, the transfer from Cal. They're lighting it up.
Well, Mark Few's an excellent basketball coach, and he's brought Gonzaga into a situation where they're one of the best teams in the country. Now, are they the best team in the country? Right now, you have to say so because they're undefeated, but because of the league they play in and their RPI and their strength of schedule within their league, I don't think they're the best team in the country. I think it'll play itself out, but they have done a great job with transfers, and they've done that before.
We're going to double John's time up next week because we got to get to Myles Brennan, but here's a $50 gift certificate to our place, Chase Dallas Chase. Check it out right there on Maple. By the way, John Brady, we're going to get into Villanova because that's the team last year that won it, and when they got to the Final Four, John picked it. They're special as well. So we're going to get Kansas, Villanova, and pretty much the entire basketball landscape. I've got to thank John Brady. I got to also thank my other guests. But coming up next, well, we have a guy that's going to sign with the LSU Tigers as John Brady signs this ball. Well, he's going to be a Tiger. His name is Myles Brennan. Coming up next right here on Primetime Sports. I always love to hear the sounds of a man from Dirty Dozen Brass Band. That is Ephraim E.T. Towns. And with all due respect to my previous guests, Bobby Hebert, Paul Maineri, and John Brady, if you're an LSU Tiger fan, I saved the best for last. That's right, because tomorrow, my next guest will officially be an LSU Tiger unless he pulls a Gunnar Kiel on us. But this guy threw for over 15,000 yards in just 3 seasons. And get this, in 3 seasons, a quarterback in St. Stanislaus, 168 touchdown passes. It's mind-boggling. By the way, he broke all the Mississippi passing records previously held by Brett Favre's nephew, Dylan Favre, at the same high school. So to break the state record, well, to break the high school record, he had to break the state record, so it wasn't easy. But he's been here before. His name is Myles Brennan. Obviously, he is the family Brennans of the restaurant food here. I had his Uncle Dickie on just a few months ago, but he's on the other side with the Brennan restaurant family. But we're here to talk football, so welcome back to the show, my friend.
Thank you for having me. I'm glad to be back.
Well, I had you when you committed to the Tigers, and, well, it's been a little bit of a roller coaster since.
For sure.
Let's just jump right into this because there was a coaching change, and obviously Les Miles and Cam Cameron. Heck, you were at Les Miles' house this summer.
For sure.
Talk about what's happened during the school year.
It's been a crazy recruiting process. I committed back in April, and
right.
I stuck through. And I was under Coach Les and Coach Cameron. Things were going really smooth, really well. I went down to the camp. Was excited for the season. Halfway through the season, they're both let go.
What was your first thought? Because there's Cameron right there. Obviously, he's the offensive coordinator you thought you'd be under. But what was your first thought after the Auburn game when you got that news?
My coach pulled me aside, my head coach, and we kind of were talking about it on a Sunday meeting. We were kind of not really expecting it to happen, but we knew if it did happen, we were going to come up with a backup plan. And so, we were talking about it, and it did happen. It happened right as we were talking. And so, it hit me. And I knew that, I loved LSU. That's why I committed in the first place. So I wasn't just going to pull the trigger and open my recruitment up because I really wanted to be at LSU, and I was just going to wait and see what happened. So obviously, the rest is taking care of itself. And the season went on. Coach Orgeron got hired. Got a little transition period, no uncertainty of who the offensive coordinator was going to be, and that's when I kind of reopened things just to make sure I made the best decision.
I have to go there because I did a couple Oklahoma State games this year for Fox Sports. I did a game against TCU in the Oklahoma game. They have an explosive offense, let's be honest.
For sure.
They can throw the football. Mike Gundy, it was a quarterback at Oklahoma State himself. They were courting you very closely before, and you had interest in them. All of a sudden, when Ogeron comes out and says, hey, I'm looking for a guy who's a run-pass dual threat. And by the way, you did run for like 800 yards and a bunch of touchdowns, but you're going to make your living throwing the football. Sure. What was your thought?
Yeah, I mean, that's really when I reopened it. When he came out in his press conference and said what he said, I just want to make sure I made the best decision. And I feel like that's why I reopened it. He said that he needed a backup plan if something happens. So I figured, if they're looking for a backup plan, I feel like I should have one too. And that's when Oklahoma State called and offered that night. They actually came down for an in-home visit after they lost to Oklahoma. I told him that I wasn't going to make a decision until LSU got an offensive coordinator. They hired Coach Canada, and I felt really comfortable with that. I watched plenty of hours of tape on him, I'm glad to be a Tiger.
By the way, Myles, I'll always remember you for one thing. You introduced me to the emoji, the thinking emoji. You put on Twitter right when he said that, and I was like, I'm into emojis. I may be the only dude that is, but the thinking emoji, and I'm like, and I've used that a bunch since. But talk about Matt Canada. Let's talk about what he might bring, because obviously Nathan Peterman has become a big-time prospect for the NFL under his tutelage at Pittsburgh.
Yeah, I mean, just the tapes that I've watched on him, coming from Pittsburgh, beating Clemson, who's the, obviously the national champions of of 2017, it's huge. His offense, I feel like I fit perfectly. They have different variations. A point he made is they have, over 3,900 plays, and that's just the different variations of every concept that they can run. And a big point he makes is that it keeps defenses out of their comfort zone. When you're in defense, you're trying to prepare for the next week's game, and you see thousands of different variations of formations and plays, and you don't know what to expect, and then you come out next week and you don't see any of that because it's a whole new package. I mean, you don't know what to do. So
let's talk about what LSU's getting. I know this is a common question, but your style as a quarterback. I mean, tell people what you're like, what kind of passer you are, what kind of offense you like to be in.
I just obviously, my title is a pocket passer. That's what people have given me that title. I'm going to stay in the pocket. I'm going to take the hit. I'm going to be a hero. That's kind of my motto. I'm going to keep my eyes downfield, go through the progressions, make the correct read, be smart with the ball. All the intangibles a smart quarterback has to have to be successful. But at the same time, I can escape the pocket when needed. I can keep the play alive. I love to, when I get forced out the pocket, to keep my eyes downfield and to, just make plays when I need to make them.
Well, you got this frame. I mean, I got to tell you, and I'm not trying to put pressure because nobody's Tom Brady, but I've watched Tom Brady's progression from as a kid in California to going to Michigan and, and his body progression. And I'm looking at, even since I saw you last summer, you've gotten bigger, you've gotten stronger. What are your thoughts about next season and even getting bigger for college football?
Yeah, I mean, I can't wait. Obviously, it's been a little difficult just with my body type is to put on weight. But, I've talked to Coach Moffitt at LSU, the strength coach, and it's not going to be a problem for me to put on weight. I'm planning to get to, 210, 215. Still to be mobile in the pocket, but have the protection to take those hits and be able to get up and play the next play.
All right, do you know Danny Etling or Brandon Harris? And obviously you've got Lowell Narcisse, who's another highly touted quarterback coming in. There's going to be a healthy competition.
For sure. I mean, Danny was the first guy that I met on my unofficial visit when I first committed. We went out to eat with Coach Cameron, my mom, my dad, Danny, and Foster Morrow. Those were the first guys that I met. Danny was actually my host on my official visit, so I spent the whole week with him. Great guys down there. Lowell and I have become very close throughout the months, and I'm really excited to get down there.
Foster Morrow happened to be great friends with his mom and uncle. That's kind of funny you mentioned his name. You two kind of look alike, too.
For sure.
Let's look. You were at the Under Armour game. That's a huge compliment to play in this game with the other stars around the country. Talk about that.
It was a great experience. It was a way to get away from the high school aspect of it and go down and compete at the highest level of competition. Every athlete was going to the next level, and that was huge to be able to to play against those guys and really to see how different it is going to be in college with the speed of the game. I endured everything.
Was it a big difference?
It was a big difference. I learned a lot. The thing I took away is that it really wasn't that the receivers were open. You had to make them open. You had to put them in position to be open. There was not a window. You had to put the ball for them to go get, which is something I had never seen in high school. So it was awesome to kind of get a little feel of that, a little taste, and I'm really looking forward to it.
Who's your favorite growing up? I mean, you're still growing up, but
yeah,
who'd you
sure.
like?
I mean, I kind of had, many favorites. Obviously, Peyton Manning, who's one of the greatest of the greatest. Drew Brees, just because he's a hometown guy. Personally, we know him as our family. But it was kind of those two guys that I modeled the most. Obviously, Andrew Luck, Aaron Rodgers, just kind of the great quarterbacks that have been successful throughout the years.
Do you like any bad quarterbacks?
It's hard to find a bad quarterback right now in the league. They're all pretty, all good, all decent. I like Jared Goff, coming from Cal, kind of I've gotten,
sure.
Him and I have kind of had the same characteristics and traits. So I'm excited and looking forward to it.
All right, you were on this summer, and you did your mama solid because we were talking about your parents. Obviously, Owen, who played football at Tulane. Your mom played volleyball at Tulane. I said, where'd you get your athletic? He goes, definitely my mom. It's not like, well, you're not going to give your dad a solid right now on this one.
Sure,
but here, you sign this ball right here, and this is your only the second one. Paul Maineri and John Brady have signed it, make it the third one. This is our tradition, but that's Myles Brennan, and hopefully if you're watching the replays on Wednesday and Thursday, he is a Tiger. He's not going to pull a gun or keel and go to Notre Dame. But I think we're pretty solid with this one. He's very excited to be in Baton Rouge, and I know the LSU Tiger contingent in as well. And by the way, it was a great opening show on CST, but I have to thank the folks at WLAE because we're still on here twice a week, and they do great things. Will Hill, my producer, Josh J. Smooth Smith, and don't forget Naila, the Redhead Tsunami, Kenny Juno, and of course, Jim Dotson and Ron Yeager. Thank you. We're coming back for episode 2 and 51 on WLE next week right here on Primetime Sports.